Welcome to Lockbox, a podcast providing real estate professionals with action items for success. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm going to be your host. I'm the founder of two real estate marketing and tech companies, STEEZY.Digital and RealNurture.io. In this podcast, you'll learn from top 1% real estate and mortgage brokers the exact secrets to their success. Welcome to Lockbox.
Welcome to Lockbox. My name is Jeffrey Brogger, and I'm here today with Zackary Boothe. Zachary, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here, man.
Yep, absolutely. So start off, tell our listeners who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, so my name is Zack Boothe. I live in Utah, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So we'll dive into, Dfd Mastery, everything you have going on today. But what first got you into real estate?
Well, when I was 14, I actually was mowing lawns for my family business after school. And I remember asking my dad about, why people weren't mowing our lawn and why everyone else's houses were giant and ours weren't. Like, why do they have money and we don't? And my dad told me to talk to his rich friend. His name's Clint Sherman. He had a bunch of rentals. I'm like, Dad, he's not rich. He's got a beat up old truck. And I was like, his truck's crap, Dad. He's like, no, he's just cheap some. He's got a lot of money. And he actually told me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book by Robert Kiyosaki. And so I read it at 14 years old. He gave it to me and I read it. And that was the first time my little brain started thinking about entrepreneurship and doing my own thing and maybe one day being in real estate. And so my first actual deal was in 2012. I was in my early 20s. I was just barely 22. And I purchased a duplex. I house hacked with my bride and my newly married wife. And we lived on one side and rented the other. And that was my first actual deal, my first taste. So it's been 10 years ago that I did my first deal.
Nice. Yeah, we have a similar story in that I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad at about 16, 17, and really opened my eyes and made me a believer that real estate investment was a means to achieve financial freedom. And it helped define what financial freedom even was and what an asset truly was. And, something it's income producing. A lot of people think their house is an asset, but Robert Kiyosaki said, well, it can be, but he helped to really just clarify like what's an asset, what's a liability. And later on, I even bought the game Cash Flow and learned about doodads. And yeah, I went pretty deep on that, but kind of similar. Like I had an investment property through my 20s that really opened my eyes to the power of real estate. So can definitely appreciate that journey. And nowadays, what you're focused on is this Dfd Mastery. I mean, you got YouTube, you got TikTok, you got so much content out there. It's kind of crazy. So why don't you dive in a little bit on the concept behind Dfd Mastery?
Yeah. So, I went from a broke window cleaner to making over $1 million a year as a real estate wholesaler / flipper. Right. And to do that, you got to get properties at a major discount. So as my journey progressed to getting out of window cleaning, a business that I grew for a decade in trying to get into real estate full time, I saw wholesaling as that opportunity. But the major barrier, one of the main barriers you have, especially in this current, economy, in this current market, is deals, deeply discounted deals. That's the key. Right. So I dabbled in different ways to find deals. I lost money by hiring a horrible digital marketing company, signed a $30,000 contract. And not only did I not do a deal, I never got a lead from these people. Right. So I made a lot of mistakes trying to find deals. And a lot of it was on credit cards. And I ended up doing okay, sending some postcards and doing some cold calling to public records that I pulled from county office buildings and city buildings of like divorce list, a probate list, eviction list, code violation list, some of these public records. Tax delinquent, I did a couple and I did okay. And this was back in like 2017. And then it got harder and harder and it kept getting harder. And one of the big things that like just completely killed me was the cities got together and said, hey, let's put all this public records on a state website. It's the only time I've ever seen the government do anything efficiently, and it really screwed me up because now every flipper had instant access every week to all these public records. You used to have to go fight with the secretaries to get them, and they'd be like, oh, it's not public records. And you'd have to fight with them and even have your attorney call them. Like it was ridiculous, right? So now the barrier entry to get these lists is everyone can have them. And so my conversions dropped. I had 2 months I didn't have a deal, and I had walked away from my day job, my window cleaning. I had no choice. I had to be successful. And I was like, well, how am I going to find these deals? So I started doing the old school driving for dollars, right? I would drive around. I would look for ugly houses or beat up houses that needed a flipper, right? The ugly house on the block. I'd write down the address. I'd look it up on county records. I'd find out who owned it and what their mailing address was. And I'd send them a postcard. Right. And I was doing that, and I started getting some deals, and I started recruiting some people. And then I found out about this app, and I even put in like a $70,000 deposit to try and build my own, which led me to meeting the owners of a new app called Deal Machine. And with their help, they really modified the app to do what I needed it to do to accomplish my goals. But I went from making $100,000 my first full year or my first 8 months of wholesaling. The next year we started doing driving for dollars, and we made just shy of $500,000. The next year after that, we did 1.2 million. And it was all because of driving for dollars, but in a systematic, scaled way. Most people see driving for dollars as something that you only do if you're just trying to get your first deal. But it's not a proven, duplicatable, like automated marketing channel. And I've completely debunked that. We do over $1 million a year just from that marketing channel alone.
Yeah, I'd just like to stop you there, and then we can dive back in further. So driving for dollars, love the concept. Love that you've dispelled the myth that it's just a beginner's concept as well, because you've tried a lot of the other things. Very much. And now you have a thriving business that actually is completely centered around driving for dollars, hence the name Dfd Mastery. So, I don't want to totally derail where you were going with that, but I heard this crazy story about how you wanted to prove that this is possible for anyone, anywhere on a small budget. And so you took like $1,000 and flew to a market you had no connections in, and you documented the entire process to where you then were able to, in a 40-day period, absolutely blow the doors off what anyone would expect that you could accomplish in that time. So I would love for you to just, if you want to wrap up what you're saying, I apologize for cutting you off, but I would love for you to dive into that story because it's so relevant and so powerful.
Yeah, I did that, right? Like I wanted to show people how possible it was. I wanted to help people overcome their fear, their feelings of inadequacy, right? Because they might see someone like me that's making over $1 million a year and be like, well, he's different, right? He has a team, he has money, he has, you can find 15 things that I don't have or that I have right now that you don't have. So I was like, okay, well, I want to inspire and show them that I'm no one special. I have to get rid of my team. I have to do it all on my own because most people, don't. And I have to go with a limited amount of money. I went with $1,000, and I flew to a different part of the country. I flew to Tampa, Florida. I'd never been there. I'm from Utah. And the goal was just to do what I teach my students, do what I teach, right? Do what I help people do and document it day by day. And the reason I did this is I believe that if you want to have success, you first have to have a massive belief that it's possible. Because if you don't start with a massive belief that it's possible, you're not going to give 110% because you're not really sure if it's going to work out. Why would you make that huge investment and that sacrifice if you're not confident? And so I wanted to give that confidence so people would take massive action. If they took massive action, they'd have success. And if they had success, then they would be like, oh, see, I knew I could do it. And they snowball upwards, right? They have this constant success. They're on a path to accomplishing whatever they set their minds to. Right. But the opposite happens for people. Have you ever heard of being stuck in a rut? It's that concept that things aren't working out well. They don't have a lot of belief. And so they take a little bit of action. They get, not very good results. You're like, see, I knew I was a loser. See, I knew I couldn't do it. And they have this feelings of inadequacy and they spiral downwards in life. Sure. And it's not because they're not great. It's not because they don't have great potential. It's just they didn't start with that confidence and that conviction. And I was thinking back to the beginning of my journey, and I was so skeptical of anyone that shouted from the rooftops they were a coach and they could help people and they knew the secret sauce and whatever, right? It's like, oh, they're just trying to make money. And I got into coaching because I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back. And so I thought back to my journey and I was like, what kept me from being a believer? What kept me from being successful? Because it took me years of even just doing my first wholesale deal, not just years to be successful. Like it was a grind. It hurt, right? And what happened to me was I was washing windows for a very wealthy gentleman. His name was Stan. Found out Stan was a developer. So I had to know everything about Stan. Told me about how he'd retired in his early 20s and had all this financial success. And I heard his story. We spent like an hour talking. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, man, if I could just pick up 2 rentals, it would just be awesome. Right. That's one of my goals this year. This was clear back in 2015. And he said, oh, that's very convenient. I have these 2 properties that I don't want to deal with. He hadn't collected rents in 4 months. Property manager bailed. They had deferred maintenance. And he didn't want to deal with it. He said, I have an agent that wants to list them, but she's asked me to do all this stuff and she won't go in. She wants me to mow the lawn. She wants me to evict the tenants. She won't do anything to get her commission, but I don't want to deal with any of it. I would want to sell them as is. I said, well, I'd love to buy them, but I would need to get them at a price and sell our finance. He's like, oh, 100%. I'll give you a great deal. But then he pulled out a piece of white paper and I'm trying to talk him out of signing the agreements. We needed official contracts. And I was terrified. Right. And he basically passed these properties over at a massive discount. He said, and he educated me too. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. He's like, no, you're not committing 100%. You're going to take this to the title company. You're also going to call a real estate agent and get comps and figure out how much of a discount I really am giving them to you. Because I know what they're worth. And he said, and then this is the financing. You're going to be able to look into how much they could rent for. You're going to be able to cover your mortgage. You're going to go and look at the properties. You're going to go knock on the doors and get in and look at them and see how bad they are. Take pictures for me because I want to see. And he educated me on the process. Right. And I ended up getting those properties, kicking the tenants out, leasing them out. And I did a lease option, meaning the tenants that rented it had an option to buy me out. If they bought me out, and they did the next year, if they bought me out, I would make over 130 grand. Right. And so I had this experience, right, of meeting Stan. And I'm like, holy crap, everything that I've been hearing is real. It's real, guys. I'm like, it's not just a dream. People trade convenience for price. It happens. Wealthy, intelligent, tired landlords exist.
Yep.
Yeah, it exists every day, all day. And that's how I make my money. But I saw it happen. It was real. Mm-hmm. It wasn't real until it was real for me, until I saw it happen, until I saw it actually happen. So I was like, what gift can I give to people? And I'm like, well, I can give them the action steps, but if they don't believe, they won't take action. So the greatest gift that I could think that I could give the world is a belief and a conviction that I'm no one special. And if I can do it, you can do it. And I had to prove it with a camera over my shoulder day by day. That's why I did it.
Yeah. So you went to Tampa and literally camera over your shoulder day by day from scratch. You documented this saga of just going out, seeing houses, going back, looking up the title record. If it's non-owner occupied, where do they live? Sending them a postcard, getting them on the phone, following up. And so you documented every single step of the process, right?
Every single step. So I actually didn't do postcards because postcards is actually my most profitable marketing channel, but I get leads tomorrow and I needed leads yesterday, right? I needed to be quick. I had 40 days, guys.
Yeah.
So because normally from the time I identified the house to getting it under contract with postcards is actually about 30 or 3 months out. 3 months. I didn't have 3 months, I had 40 days. And so when I landed, the first thing I did is I got the Deal Machine app. Okay. So when I used to write down the addresses, now there's tech, right? I mentioned the Deal Machine app that I helped push some tech upgrades. I don't own the company or anything. I know the owners. I love them. I've been working with them since 2018. I actually had a call with them yesterday.
I get that though. You either were going to develop it yourself or find someone that could become it. And so you became a stakeholder in shaping that app into what it is today because they already had the infrastructure. They had already gotten through the iOS requirements to be on the App Store, right? Like they had already accomplished a lot of the goals. So then you're like, cool, I don't need to develop that.
And I had no interest. I am not that guy, right? I feel like
I just need a tool.
Enough. Exactly. I wanted the tool to make money with real estate. I don't want to own a tech company. Yeah. So anyways, there's this tech that imagine you have a Google Maps in front of you and you can see yourself on the Google map. And you go, oh man, that house right there. I want that one. I want to market to that house. You touch the house on Google Maps and it uploads all of the information on a Google spreadsheet. Phone numbers, emails, mailing address, property address, owner's information. Is it corporate owned, owner occupied, absentee? Everything you need, right? And then you can also tag it of we tag the worst of our worst, and it'll put that tag on your Excel spreadsheet. So you can filter it down and send it out to your marketing, right? So that's the first thing I did, is got Deal Machine. And then I went to work and started driving, right? And I found those properties. Then when I got some properties, I got the phone numbers for them. And then I sat down on a computer and used Mojo Dialer or mojosales.com. It's a triple line dialing platform. So I can call 3 people at one time, and I don't have to hand dial. So I upload my list and I just sit there and start calling. If you guys just want to watch one day of the challenge, go to day 4. Day 4 was the best day. It was the highlight of my trip. I called for like 5-6 hours that day, but I got 3 sellers on the phone that day that resulted in 5 contracts. Just so you guys know, in my business, 5 contracts on average equals $150,000 on average, right? So
about 30 grand a contract.
30 grand a contract. But I was in Florida. My deal size is actually smaller there, but in Utah, it's 30 grand. And so I was ecstatic. I had no idea what they were really worth. Ultimately, I didn't know the market very well. I had been there for 4 days. Right?
Yeah, these are my next questions, but I'm going to let you continue.
Yeah. So it was an incredible experience. But yeah, Deal Machine and Mojo Dialer is what I did to generate my leads. So you guys can go do this. Like, I'm not like giving you guys this content so you'll have just enough to then join my program. If you want to coach, if you want my cell phone, then you can look into my coaching program. But I don't want you guys to lose me here because you're thinking, oh, this dude just wants to sell something. Like this whole thing is like, this is what I do. This is how I do it.
Yeah,
this is like, you can watch this thing and go freaking make 90 grand in 40 days. Like that's what I'm giving you guys.
Love it. Okay. So at this point now, we are in contract and we have talked to sellers, right? My question is, how do you know what that property is worth and as is, and how do you know how much then you can offer, knowing that you're going to have to then assign it and have a flipper come in and buy it with the assignment fee and still make money, right?
Yeah.
How's that all work?
There's some equations, but you still don't know everything, right? Yeah. So there was one property I put under contract and I couldn't move it because there was actually foundational issues and there was a giant tree and there was things I missed in my inspection. So ultimately what I think it's worth doesn't matter. What matters is what the end buyer, the flipper, says it's worth and what he says the repair costs will be and everything else, right?
Sure.
So I'm going to do my very best to make an offer that I think is reasonable, that I think that I can make money and is enough meat on the bone for me to get a portion and for my end buyer to flip it and make a portion, or buy and hold investor to make a portion. So one of the things that I had to do while I was doing the marketing is build a cash buyers list, right? And find people that would buy the deals from me. So while I was cold calling, I was also getting on Facebook groups and finding cash buyers and other wholesalers in the area. What I ended up doing was called brokeraging a trade of cash buyers lists. So I called one wholesaler. I said, hey, do you want to grow your cash buyers list? He said, yes, I do. I said, okay, great. Would you do a trade? I can trade up and get you more. And he said, yes. How many do you have? I said, well, I'm going to get you more than you have. That's the goal. So how many do you have that you could give? You don't have to give them to me, but what's the number you have? Oh, I've got 1,200. Okay, you have 1,200. I'll come back to you. And I call the next guy and I say, hey, I have 1,200 cash buyers. Do you want to trade up and get more? How many do you have? Oh, I've got 800. I go to the next guy. He's got 2,000. So I said, everyone send me their cash buyers lists. I got rid of duplicates and I sent them all the bigger list. But I got the bigger list as well. So I did that while I was doing everything else. I had dual screens. So I had one screen always dialing, cold calling. And then I'm sending emails, messages on Facebook, networking. I even had some guys come out, some other wholesalers to come out and see what I was doing. And I was there cold calling while talking to them. I was able to get comps from them to figure out what the properties were worth. I was using Zillow, Redfin.
Smart.
Until I networked with a real estate agent that was willing to give me MLS access to do my own comps. Right. So I'm like willing and dealing and negotiating. So there's a few things I had to have: cash buyers lists and leads. Right. I had to get a title company in place and find one that did real estate wholesaling. I found that through networking on the Facebook groups. And then the other thing that I had to do was then figure out how, your main question was, how do I evaluate what I can offer? So the equation is your after repair value. I have to figure out what it's worth once it's completely fixed up. Total best possible price to sell at retail. Mm-hmm. So let's say it's worth, for easy numbers, $200,000, right? Then what I do is I subtract 8% out of that. The way you do that is you times it by 0.92. What that 8% is is, the flippers, hard money costs, reselling costs for title and agent, right? So if it's 200,000 times that by 0.92, that brings us down to 184. So then I go, okay, best guess for repairs, and like I said, I might be off because there's a tree that's lifting the foundation. I didn't notice it. Right. So there'll be things that I don't see because I'm not experienced, and it may cost me a deal and I might have to go back and renegotiate, but that's the due diligence period on the contract, right? Sure. That's why it's there. So let's say the repairs are 20 grand. That brings us down to 164,000. Well, I know the flipper is going to want to make his portion as well. So the rule of thumb is 10% of the ARV. So I know the flipper wants to make probably 20 grand. So then another 20 grand out of that is 144,000. So I know that my break even number is 144. Whatever I can negotiate it below that is going to be potential assignment fee. Got it. So that's the equation I use, and some of the things that I put in place to make it a reality.
I like how you base it off of ARV at the top and then start subtracting. I think that's a really smart way to do it. And then if the property, for example, as is, might be worth, I don't know, 125, but you can negotiate it for 110, you're in the money.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the other perfect part about, only marketing to deeply rundown properties or rough properties with driving for dollars. You're only marketing to people that when they do want to sell, most likely will want to sell to an investor. Because if it's kind of dated, but in really good shape, and they call me and say, Zach, I want to sell it fast. I know it's worth 200,000 fixed up. I'll sell it to you for 190. It's like, well, just pay an agent. Just pay an agent. I tell them that. And you'll see me, I actually take Coronas to this awesome Mexican guy. He has a really nice house and he's about ready to retire. And I was like, dude, just list it with an agent. Like, what are you doing talking to me? And he's like, okay, I will. And I'm like, all right. You know what I mean? So most people think that, you're trying to convince people to do something that's not in their best interest. You're actually trying to find someone that basically wants a pawn shop for the house. That's their best, that's their best option. I tell people all the time, if you're changing your negotiation tactics when a family member calls you, you're doing it completely wrong, right? Like you should be going, you'll see it on day 4, Jerry calls me. Like I prayed that I would find a Jerry because I prayed. I said, God, I want to find a Stan, that person that prove to me that it's possible. This wealthy investor that's done with his properties, send me one of them, please, so that I can show the world and serve. Right. And he did. He sent me Jerry, and he's been on my podcast. Love him to death. He's since passed away from cancer since I did this, but wonderful human being. I love him to death. And he willed and dealed, told me all of his willing and dealing stories of how he had built his portfolio. But, he had these properties he didn't want to deal with. And on day 4, I called him and they're completely remodeled. 2 of them that he sold me, 2 of the 3. And I said, Jerry, you probably could get more money if you just listed them with an agent. I could have them done quickly. Why don't you just list them though? He said, Zach, I don't care. I want to be done with them. I was like, oh, okay, I can help you. Right. Like I literally told him to not work with me. And he said, no, that's not what I want. I want this. Right. Right. So the goal is to pre-qualify people first and then serve the people that need your services.
Love that. Yeah, great concept, great checklist. I mean, pre-qualification is super key. And if you just give them the option out and then they actually fight back and say, no, I want to work with you. Well, now we're talking, right? Yeah. So love that. And I love you just seem like you're, Bradley Cooper in Limitless, where like you got 2 screens and you got like 3 cold calls happening at once. And then like over here, you got the Facebook group, you got the wholesaler in the side and you're like talking to him, and then someone picks up, the other 2 hang up and the one rings through and you're like, boom, you follow the script and like,
yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. I mean, I had a stint within that 40 days that from the time I got out of bed, like I got up and went to I got like a little condo place, but I went and worked out, and then I went to my, little room there, took a shower, and I even had shipped my family down to Brazil. My wife's from Brazil, so I didn't have my 2 kids there. It was a major sacrifice. So you guys, like I dedicated 40 days of my life to others, like 100%. It was purely like, I didn't even see my family. It was horrible. Yeah. Worst thing I ever did, but it was awesome. It was awesome. Right. It turned out
documented
amazing.
It, which is
yeah. So it was worth it. Right. My children's children will get to see it and they'll be like, Grandpa was a crazy man. It's totally worth it. But it was a major sacrifice to do this. But I remember there was a 4-day stint from the time I woke up, the time I went to bed, I was on the dialer. I was cooking and I was cold calling. I was eating and I was cold calling. And if one person answered the phone while I was dialing and someone else answered, there's a little recording that's me. It's going, hello, I'm going to have to call you back. And it hangs up on him. And as soon as I get off the conversation, it starts dialing them back. Right. And so I was able to just crank through and push. Like I worked really hard. Like I want people to realize, like, if you want this, you really have to want it. Right. Like saying, oh, it would be nice to be a millionaire. Oh, it would be nice to make millions of dollars a year in real estate, but there's going to be an upfront investment, right? You're going to have to want it more than the pain of doing it, right? The pain of not having the accomplishment has to be way more painful than the pain of doing the work, because it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, and it was a lot to get to where I'm at. You know, now I make over $1 million a year and I have a team that does it, right? I have 2 acquisition managers. I have a marketing guy. I have my cake and eat it too, meaning I make a lot of money and I have a ton of free time, right? I spend a ton of time in the mountains. I spend a ton of time with my family, and I do fun stuff like this, and I do podcasts, you know, awesome podcasts like this one, and I give back and serve, and I have a very fulfilling life. But there was a lot of years where I rolled up my sleeves and I did it all myself, and I continued to invest into other people and serve people, and people came and became a part of my team and have helped me grow and scale and automate this thing. But there's a lot of hard work to be successful.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And on that note, what is the single most important action item that, you know, you take on a daily basis that has attributed most to your success?
There's a couple things. I'd say the number one habit, the success habit that I have, is I have a to-do list, and I'm very conscientious of doing the things on my to-do list that'll move the needle the most. And they're usually always the most uncomfortable things, the things I want to do the least. They're things that get me out of my comfort zone. Like, it's way easier to go in and check your emails and clean out your email box and make it look all cute and pretty and empty versus picking up the phone and calling and talking to a seller. Right. Yeah. I have a goal of generating 1 contract in the next 15 days. And what's going to get you to that contract? Well, it's cold calling. It's you know, going and doing the driving, doing the things you don't necessarily want to do. But most people get bogged down in busy work that actually doesn't move the needle. So what I do is I have my Google calendars, and I have all my tasks that I have, you know, all my, like, I have to be there at that time. So KPI reviews, my team meetings, podcasts, YouTube content creation, you know, all of my like scheduled stuff. But then I have 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours here and there that I need to do my work, my busy work, my move the businesses forward. And
got it.
And so, yeah, I write it all down and work on those things.
Yeah, I like it. And what are your KPIs?
KPIs stand for key performance indicators. These are what I look at for how much I spend or how much work goes in to result in money, right? So how many times do I have to cold call the driving for dollars list? How many hours to produce this many responses, to produce this many leads? And this many leads will produce how many appointments and how many contracts and how much revenue. So I can figure out my cost per, or my net profits after my marketing expenses. All right. So every piece of marketing I have, whether it's driving for dollars, my radio ads, my PPC, my Facebook ads, all my digital marketing, you know, I want to know exactly how many pennies I'm spending on marketing and how many dollars come out of it. You know, my rule of thumb is I want to make sure I'm spending less than 25 cents to make $1, meaning I get a 75% profit margin after marketing, so that I have enough room to pay my team and still pull a very, very healthy profit margin. So that's what I look at. I look at that every single week. That's a religious thing almost at this point for my businesses. I look at those every single week, look for discrepancies and broken tech and slacking employees week to week. And then monthly, quarterly, and yearly, I can look at the big picture, the big returns, like what am I actually making? Where am I actually making my returns? And pour money into what's working and take money away from what's not working.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate you breaking that down. Yeah. I was much more interested in like your specific KPIs for you at this point in your career. And you touched on that. You know, you mentioned the different levels of KPIs, like in the business, the leads, the phone calls, KPIs, in my opinion, are always action items, a key productivity indicator, right? That typically is not something that's passive. It almost actually never is. It's always like a phone call, that's a KPI. Appointments, that's a KPI, right? Where it's actually a percentage of that will result in dollars to the bottom line based on your closing ratios, right? So yeah, very interested to learn that. Thank you for sharing. And now that you're at the level that you're at, you're doing the coaching and you're still, you're traveling a lot and you're driving around. Do you still find yourself kind of turning your head when you're with your wife and your family and you see a distressed property that you're driving through a neighborhood and you're like, oh.
Yes. I pull over often. And the funny thing is I had to, for the challenge, I don't do all of the stuff, right? And I didn't even have the login to Deal Machine, right? The app. I didn't have the login to my CRM anymore. I don't manage leads. Like I literally hadn't negotiated the deal in like 2 years when I went and did this challenge personally, right? I have my team do it and I manage and grow my team. And I'm coaching and mentoring students. I've negotiated millions and millions. I was an acquisition manager as well to learn and grow. And so like I've done it, but with my wife, yes, I'll definitely notice them, but I don't even have the app. So a lot of times I'll just like take a picture of the house and drop a pin on Google Maps and send it to my team members. Like, get this one, go door knock that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't help myself. It's funny. It's like, it's dollar signs. We actually got one that I found actually the other day. We moved houses and by my new gym, there was a house. We made like $7,000 on that one. It wasn't as big, but yeah, it happens. Yeah. They're everywhere. No, they're everywhere.
They really are. So yeah, I've had some experience with this. And once you develop the eye for it, you start looking around and you're like, there's opportunity everywhere. It's all around, right? You're driving to the gym, you're going to a restaurant, date night, you're like turning your head and your wife might think you're checking out some girl walking or something, but you're checking out this house as you're driving by. So yeah.
It's opportunity.
Absolutely. So, moving into the 2020s, a lot of people believe, why in this crazy listing market where the seller has all the power would someone possibly sell their house and they wouldn't just do it on market at top dollar, right? And you've obviously dispelled that myth, mentioning investors that are tired and would rather trade convenience for dollars. And I'm just curious, thinking about rent moratoriums and a lot of like the macroeconomic things that are either ending or influence that's starting to begin moving into the 2020s. What's your projection for off-market deals, foreclosures, the wholesale opportunity, as far as like if there was a number for the nationwide wholesale inventory, if that number existed and was accurate, do you think that number is going to be increasing over the next 5 or 10 years?
I don't know if I'm smart enough to answer that honestly. Like that's the most honest answer I can give you. I am not a macroeconomic specialist. I don't necessarily know what the economy is going to do or not do. And for me, I honestly don't think it matters at all. Not one bit. Because why have I found success? Like if I look at it, like ultimately, why have I found success? Because I've done a really good job at working really hard to get in front of the right people. Whether that's me trying to get in front of the right people that I can serve and help them become successful in business and become their coach and mentor and help them make thousands, tens of thousands, or whether I'm trying to get in front of the right person when they need help with their piece of real estate. My strategy to serve them may change because of the economy. I may need to do short sales. I may need to do seller finance. I may need to hold more properties, right? There may be new strategies that I have to implement. And I do pivot, right? I'm going to flip 36 houses this year and I didn't flip any houses last year. There's a reason for that, right? Like I will continue to pivot, but I will always find a way to make an impact and serve people and help people. And so I will always have money. That's a guarantee, right? But as far as like macroeconomics and where it's going and what the feds are going to do with the interest rates, I don't know. Like ultimately, I think too many people want to know that before they really take action. And it really doesn't matter because the successful people will be successful because they're going to roll up their sleeves and solve the problems that this new situation has given us.
Wonderfully put. Yeah, really appreciate that. Couldn't agree more. So when it comes to success, it's easy to look at someone like yourself, and you even said it in the beginning, there's this level of disbelief and disconnection because it's like, man, you got all these resources and all the success and, making $1 million a year and, you don't have to show up to work if you don't want to kind of thing. Like you own the whole shop and you can travel and spend time with family. So it's easy to see that and feel disconnected. So I'm curious if you have a failure or apparent failure that it really sets you up for later success. Like, is there a favorite failure of yours that you refer back to or tell as a story often?
Well, the failures never stop, right? First, that needs to be clear, because if you want to excel, you set goals and set your sights towards something you've never done. And, for the longest time, I told myself I'm really dumb, so I have to work really hard, right? Like that was a limiting belief I always had for myself. So I worked really hard and I made all the mistakes myself. And when I was getting burned out from my window cleaning business about 7 years in, I started listening to podcasts and reading books and trying to educate myself. Right? I thought I was really dumb. And as I started listening to much smarter people than myself, start listening to some of their action steps, I started taking some knowledge with my work ethic and putting those two things together. And I started accomplishing things I'd never done. And I started making less of the mistakes on my own. I started learning from the mistakes of other people. So, the question of mistakes I made, I'll give you one, right? So I kind of got to give a little background of how I've discovered the mistake. So I decided to start coaching because I had read a self-help journal that said, if you want to receive, you have to give. And so I'd created 3 big goals. One was to generate $1 million. So this was right after I'd done just shy of $500,000. This was the end of 2018. And I said, okay, how do I go to $1 million? And the book has said, if you want love, you give love. If you want money, you give money. Right. And so whatever your goals are, you have to give away whatever it is. So it's like, one of my goals is $1 million. I have to give away $1 million. How the heck do I do that? So I was like, you know what I could do? I could go to my mentor who taught me about wholesaling. I say, hey, I want to put $1 million in 10 people's pockets. I'm going to coach 10 people. I'm going to teach them my marketing system to put $500,000. I can easily put $1 million in 10 people's pockets. Will you help me find these students that would implement? Because I need them to implement, because if not, then I don't accomplish my goal. Right. And so who do you know that needs leads? And he helped me find 10 students, started coaching them, and they had a massive amount of success. And I loved it. And it fulfilled me. That's why I became a coach, is the fulfillment. But one of the mistakes I realized, one of many, the more I taught them, the more I realized how many holes and how I shouldn't say how stupid I was, but like how many mistakes I was making in my business. I'll share one that was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I had them send postcards or buy a tracking number to put on their postcards. So when they got a call, they know where it came from, whether it was driving for dollars or something else. So on my tracking phone numbers that I sent out on my postcard, I said, call or text me if you would like an offer or whatever. One of my students asked me, Zach, how do you know that you're receiving your text messages? They're not showing up in my CRM, meaning they're not seeing the text messages. And I'm scratching my head and I'm like, I've never received a text message. Guys, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that went down the drain because of one simple, stupid clerical error on my part. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
I went into it's called Callfire, is where I was buying my phone numbers. And I went in and on the back end, I could actually see all the text messages. Text message after text message. I was able to salvage almost $100,000 worth of deals, but there was like 2 years of text messages, guys.
Right.
It made me sick. It still makes me sick, right? But I've made lots of mistakes, but I found that I make less mistakes when I educate myself and learn from intelligent people. And also, and more importantly, is when I teach and serve and give, I make even less. Because if you want to be great and really know something, teach it. So one of my favorite books by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, you want to retain more information, teach it, or learn to teach it. And so as I've taught it is when I've really grown and made less mistakes. But yeah, that's one of the many, 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 many mistakes I've made in my journey.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and definitely a humanizing and humbling experience.
Yeah,
that you checked two-way SMS on the call tracking numbers, and then created the postcard and said call or text, and you're like, man, no texts are coming through to my cell phone because texts, when you use a tracking number, don't forward, right? Only the phone call forwards to the destination. So I know enough about call tracking and marketing to realize the disconnect there. And it's, like you said, it's a simple, just overlooked thing that, boom, when compounded, when you're teaching it to others and they bring that feedback back to you, you're like, I didn't even realize I overlooked that. So you're right. When you teach, it sharpens what you learn and do. It's really interesting, and it holds you accountable to a higher standard. So Thanks for sharing that. So for those that are out there interested in watching either this entire 40-day challenge, the 40 for 40, whatever, how do they discover where they can view that, sign up for it? Like, how do they learn more?
Yeah. So I give it for free. There's a little landing page. You guys can go get access to it. It's called dfdmastery.com/40 in 40. And I assume you're going to put it in the show notes for them as well.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's super interesting. I mean, the fact that you're giving that away for free, and like you said throughout this podcast, the whole point of this is not to tell you enough so that you have to then sign up for coaching. Like, you literally just gave us the formula via audio here on the podcast, and then you documented the formula in a 40-day process via video and are giving it away for free. Like, you clearly just could care less if someone pays for your coaching or not. Like, you're there to serve. And that's what I really appreciate about you. I can tell.
Yeah, I really, really, really want to help people. I was talking to my wife, like, I wish my grandfather and my great-grandfather and his great-grandfather recorded their best things, their best moments, their ahas in life, their things that made them successful in being a father and being a husband and being a provider and all of those things that I want to be, all those things that I think is valuable for Zack Boothe to become. I wish the people that cared about me would have shared that, would have documented this stuff. Like, I'm so excited for my family to have these things, and the whole world gets to. I can go across boundaries. I can go to places. So I served a Christian mission in Sao Paulo, Brazil in my late teens. And I saw poverty there, and I saw things that really opened my eyes to, how being born here, I won the lottery. And I promised myself that I would take advantage of that privilege and that blessing, that I wouldn't feel bad about it, but I would give it everything I had, and I would do my best to help others and give back. And, podcasts and YouTube and all this content, it doesn't matter your economic background. You get to learn and see these things and grow and develop. And it's an incredible platform. But, for me, I hope that I do coach people. I do hope that people that are needing a mentor, right, that think that I might be a fit for them and that want my personal cell phone and want me to encourage them and give them the action steps, I'm happy to coach them. But I know that my impact as a coach and like just my coaching students is so granular in comparison to what I really want to accomplish, that by holding back all the gold is going to keep me from serving at the capacity that I want to.
Makes total sense. And I can certainly appreciate that. I mean, the fact that you not only went on a Christian mission to serve, but also that eye-opening experience of going to an impoverished area and coming back with so much gratitude, now that carries through to what you do today. Like, you still want to serve and help people and empower people. And you've noticed that lights you up, right? You notice that when you you can go do the thing as the sales rep on the daily, but when you teach someone else how to do it and blow their mind and see their eyes light up of how much money they can make and just totally reframe their reference for what reality could be, that's where you seem to find more fulfillment, which is very similar to myself as well. I find more fulfillment in the management role as opposed to the sales representative role, even though I can do both. So I can definitely appreciate that. Now, is there a question that I should have asked you or anything that you'd like to expand upon from earlier?
Not necessarily. I just hope that people will believe in themselves, and if real estate's not your thing, don't get into it because you think you can make a ton of money, right? Like, I think too many people pick an industry because they want to make money. And I did that for a while. And I think what's most important is think about what's more valuable to you, right? What's most valuable to you? What lights you up? What gets you excited? For me, it's coaching and serving and helping people in business. I love business in general. I love business. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 17. On my 18th birthday, I got my first business license and got bonded and insured so I could get bigger contracts. Like, I geek out on business. And I geek out on helping people and talking about business. And so I've built my life and my businesses and my journey around what I'm passionate about. And I think that, people should do the same. And so that would just be my suggestion. Don't start a business just for the money. Start it for, because your passion, and serve and add value to other people around you, and the money will come in. It's just a measurement of your value you're adding.
Absolutely. I love that. It's a measurement of the value you're adding. So how can listeners contact you? You mentioned the Dfd Mastery, right? The link for the 40 and 40. Is that the best way?
Yeah, that's a great way to get access to the content. I'm on all social media platforms. So you probably just Google me, and wherever you want to find me, you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Zachary Boothe, everyone. Really appreciate having you on. Dfd Mastery, incredible story. I love the 40 and 40. And, I have experience in deal finding and wholesaling myself, but I think I'm going to sign up and just watch it with my wife. Just tune in.
Check it
like
out.
It's a new saga and TV series.
There you go. Yeah.
The Chronicles.
I don't know if I'm as entertaining as, some of our favorite reality TV stars, but I did my best to teach and to give it everything I had.
Absolutely. No, and I can tell, I really feel the sincerity coming through on the podcast, and I know my listeners will as well. So thank you so much for being on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening. If you want to accomplish your real estate goals, then I highly suggest downloading my free Ultimate Real Estate Goal Setting Framework. The link is in the description of the show, and it will help you break down your annual income goal into the amount of phone calls, appointments, or open houses you need in order to achieve that goal. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.